Reading with your kids.
Hey, so great to see you. Come on in. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and honored that you are joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your podcasts. Our guest today is Erika Deery. She is joining us from Melbourne in Australia to celebrate Millie and the Lost Colors. Before we invite Erika in to join us in the studio, we would love to invite you to join us at two amazing live events happening in the next few weeks. On August 28th, join us at the Cape Cod Fairgrounds for Connect Fest. This is an amazing family music festival that we've been a part of for many years. It's happening at the Cape Cod Fairgrounds. Our buddy Phil Joel, the author of Redwoods in Wales, he's been on the show. He's also a former member of the Newsboys and of Zealand Worship. He'll be there with his band on the main stage. I'll be performing on the family stage, my interactive family magic show. We'll also have a great Reading with Your Kids booth where you can come over and experience some more magic, maybe be on the podcast and win some books. That's happening August 28th, Cape Cod Fairgrounds in Falmouth, Massachusetts. Admission is free, but you do need tickets. They do have a limited capacity. You can get tickets at fuseconcerts.org. And on September 18th, join us in beautiful downtown Lowell, Massachusetts for the Lowell Kinetic Sculpture Race. I can't wait to be a part of this event. Folks come in, they bring these homemade, human-powered sculptures, and they race them in the water, on the street, through mud, through sand. The pictures of these creations are absolutely fantastic. It is a celebration of STEM, of learning, of family. And we're going to be there celebrating with a little bit of magic. We'll have our Reading with Your Kid booth at the start and finish line. Come on over, win some books, be on the show. That's happening September 18th in Lowell, Massachusetts. You can find out more about these events and sign up for our free newsletter at readingwithyourkids.com. Joining us right now from Melbourne in Australia. She is awake early in the morning for us. We're so excited to welcome the author of Millie and the Lost Colors, a bilingual children's book picture book series. Please welcome to the show, Erika Deery. Erika, how are you?
Hi, Jed. I'm doing great. And I've been awake for a while now.
Well, we're really happy that you're awake. We're really happy that you're here. And I'm really happy that you are creating a series of bilingual English-Spanish picture books for kids. Can you tell us the inspiration to start that series?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I live in Australia, but I'm originally from Mexico. And I married an Australian man. And when we had our first daughter, I think we both wanted our kid to be bilingual. So he was going to speak English to her. He's very good at speaking Spanish, and I would speak Spanish so that we could keep both languages alive. And also, on the other hand, I've always been very conscious or been very, wanting my kids to be readers because I grew up with a lot of books, and I think that's something that has helped me be very creative, and, it's like exercise for your brain, right? So I always wanted my kids to be readers and also to be bilingual. And we used to go to the library a lot, and there were not that many books in Spanish, obviously. There were some in maybe other languages of other cultures that we have here. So we have a lot of Vietnamese people, we have a lot of Chinese people, but not a lot of Spanish speaking. And one day I went to Mexico with my daughter, and I was on the plane, and, after I put her on the bassinet and she finally went to sleep, I couldn't watch a movie. I couldn't do anything. So I just had a notebook and a pencil. And I just wrote a book about this little baby who went to space. Because I saw my daughter, she was just so excited with the lights and the people and pulling cords and pulling the seatbelt and all those sort of things. So I thought, oh, this kid must think she's going to space. She was 6 months old there, so probably she didn't have the concept of outer space, right? But I wrote the book in Spanish. And when I got to Mexico, I started illustrating it, and I just enjoyed the process so much that I said, oh, maybe this could be a book for her. And I didn't even think about publishing it. I just thought I'll just make this book and I just, go to Office Depot or whatever to just make it. But then I got it printed and I'm like, oh, it could be a good thing. And I was going to the library a lot and I'm like, it's kind of okay. It looks okay compared to the other books. And that's with the light bulb, turned on. And I told a friend of mine who works in a library, and the first question that I wrote this book, and the first question from her, she was like, oh, is your book bilingual? And I'm like, no, it's in Spanish, but you just gave me a great idea. Mm-hmm. And that's how the books came about.
That's wonderful. What a story. You as you're talking about your daughter thinking, that maybe she was going out into space, it just made me think, do they ever think about the fact that they're getting into this aluminum tube and they're going to go up into the sky and fly across the world? It baffles my mind sometimes. Maybe kids would be easier for them to comprehend it and just kind of go with it and go, yeah, it's a normal thing we do. It's wonderful that the way that this inspiration came along. What was the first reaction when people started reading it and talking to you about it? How did you react to their reactions?
When they started reading it, I guess the first reaction was, oh, it is so cool that it's bilingual, because at least for here in Australia with my Mexican friends and my Spanish speaking friends, they were like, it's good to have this resource that we can share with our families. So I have friends who have married, Australian husbands, for example, and the husband doesn't speak Spanish, but they can still read the same book in English, and the mom can read the same book in Spanish. So it's really good in terms of vocabulary. And yeah, it was really, really good. I was really surprised of friends from Facebook, for example, that I haven't heard of since I finished junior high school. They bought the book and they liked it, or they gave it to their niece or their nephew. So yeah, it was really nice.
Yeah, wonderful. Why do you think it's so important for kids, or for your kids, but kids in general, to be able to speak multiple languages?
Aside from the fact that you get more job opportunities when you're older, and you understand jokes and you understand movies, I think for me, my kids speaking Spanish, it's also about their culture, letting them be close to their culture and to their roots. We're Mexican, and I tell them stories about the Aztecs and about the Mayans and things like that, the ones that I remember from school. Yeah, they like them, and it's about identity a lot, at least for my kids. And also, if I go back when I was a girl, my mom would force me to take English classes since I was like 8, and I hated it. Like, I really hated it, because, I would rather go to gymnastics or play with, or go skating with my friends or something like that. But now that I'm older, I thank her so much, because it opened so many doors for me. I think Australia was a lot easier because I could express myself and I could understand. I used to watch a lot of series when I was younger, so I would get the jokes, or I would get the culture. And it's not just about asking for directions or where's the toilet. It's more than that. It's just getting the joke and getting the the feel of what people want to say. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You bring up something when I've, in the past, I was mentioning to Erika before that I've toured Puerto Rico and performed my educational magic show in Spanish. And one of the things I did, because I am not fluent in Spanish, I was able to memorize my show with my 300 or 400 word Spanish vocabulary, and was able to translate my English show into Spanish and memorize it, and to the point where people thought I was fluent, and I was very proud of that.
And that's very impressive that you did that. I have to
Well,
say.
it was fun. And while I was in Puerto Rico touring, especially when I was alone, when I was doing the outer island and not in the metropolitan area, I was out by myself. I forced myself to think in Spanish. When I was driving down the street, I wouldn't think I'd take a right or a left. I'd say a derecho and izquierda and try to train myself. And I found that doing that, it was a great exercise for me, but I also started looking at the world differently. Do you notice that if you're thinking in one language that you see the world differently than when you're thinking in your other language?
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes there's this theory that you have a little bit of a different personality in one language than in another. Mm-hmm. Growing up in Spanish, I guess a lot of I went to school there, and I worked, I think my working life, I spent 3 years working in Mexico, and then I moved to Australia, and I've worked, I work in an office, doing business and things like that. So I feel like sometimes more confident in English, even though it's not my first language. But then also when it's more about feelings, I like to feel them more in Spanish, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So, it's definitely two different things. And, if my husband and I argue, sometimes I just say the same thing I argue in Spanish, but then he'll reply in English because that's how he feels his feelings more, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. It's quite interesting to see how we express ourselves in English and Spanish. And funny enough, I've been living in Australia for 13 years now, and I think I start to think more in English. The first book I wrote it in Spanish, and then I translated to English. And I think the first 3 books were like that, whereas the last one, the Millie y los colores perdidos, I wrote in English first and then translated to Spanish.
Yeah. So as I understand it, Millie and the Lost Colors is all about Millie and her friend, and they wake up one morning and go outside and discover the world has turned gray.
Yes, that's right. So they wake up, living in Melbourne, our weather changes. We have the 4 seasons in one day. So sometimes you can have a very great day, and then it's raining, and then it's the sunshine. So my daughter, when she was about 3, she was obsessed with the rainbow colors, and I think my kids are still obsessed with rainbows. I thought it would be interesting where, these kids go on, it's like a treasure hunt, and then they go and find the colors to just give color back to the world. It was interesting because this book, it was out during the pandemic, so last year in November. So I thought, the world feels so great right now, and it would be good to have more color. Yeah,
neat. So I'm imagining that even for a family where neither parent speaks Spanish, say an English-speaking family, could pick up this book and easily start talking to the kids. Este es rojo, this is red, and azul, blue, and amarillo, yellow.
Yeah, so, I know it's a podcast, but I've got the book here. For example, I kind of did it on purpose to have everything gray because I wanted to have the pop of color. So when they go in the story, they jump into a hot air balloon and they go to different countries. So, for example, in England, we were there a few years ago, and I just saw everything is gray, and then but the buses are red. So I just made it so that you could see the pop of color in each color of the rainbow. So, they go to the Netherlands, and it's an orange tulip, and because it's in the same color, at least you can start working out what it is. Mm-hmm. And you can use Google to translate and hear how the pronunciation is. So even it's a good tool. I've had grown-ups buy my books because, their son is getting married to a Mexican lady and they want to learn Spanish. So they bought it so they can teach themselves some vocabulary. Mm-hmm. So I found that interesting. It's not just for kids.
Yeah. Now, you were saying before we started recording that when you're back home in Mexico and you meet somebody from the States, from Canada, from Australia who is visiting Mexico, and you see that they are trying to speak Spanish, you were sharing with me how that makes you feel. Can you share with our audiences?
Oh, it makes me feel really happy because it means like, this person is really open to different cultures. And just like I did when I came to Australia or when I would visit the States, you want to learn the culture and the language. And it makes me really excited and happy. And even when I try to learn the slang, I was like, oh, it's so cool. Thank you. Like, it makes me feel like they value my country, as I guess that they are.
Yeah. That is something that I've really tried hard to share here on the podcast. I'm not great with languages. I've been married to my beautiful wife for over 30 years, trying to become fluent in Spanish. I've got the bad words down really good. But
that's the first thing we teach, unfortunately.
But, it's hard for me. But when I am traveling to another country, I always make it a point to at least be able to say hello, thank you. I'm sorry I don't speak your language. Can you help me in English? And I find that I've never, ever found anybody to be angry with me at that point. They've always kind of expressed that same sentiment that you just shared with us. Oh, this person respects my country. He's a nice guest. I want to help him.
Yeah, absolutely. Because on the opposite side of the coin, sometimes we receive people and who expect you to speak English, which in tourist places most Mexican people do. But it's kind of these expectations that we should adapt to you, the visitor. But this is our country, and you're visiting. So it's like if I go to your house, I have to respect your rules from your house, I suppose. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's really important. And I think that's a great lesson that we can share with our kids. It's just a really simple but important way to show respect. And I think that that's something we always want to share with our kids. We always want our kids to be respectful. We always want our kids to see us being respectful to others.
Yes, definitely. Absolutely.
I'm curious, now that you've had the success with your Millie series and people love the fact that it's in English and in Spanish, are you thinking about translating the books into a third or fourth language?
We'll see. It's been on my mind, but there's a part of me that is like, should I just write another book and make it also in English and Spanish? So we'll see. I have a friend who's from India, and she's like, yeah, please translate it, in my language, which India has a lot of languages. Mm-hmm. But she's one of my best friends here in Melbourne, and she helped me with the picture of Mumbai. So I'll just show you. I mean, I know it's a podcast, but, she helped me with the costumes and which places I should draw, and it actually looks like hers. So it was a fun thing to do.
Awesome. So did you ever imagine yourself being a children's author and illustrator?
No, not really. I never thought it was something I could do. I guess I've always liked drawing and creating, this character does this and lives here, but I never gave them a story of something they would do until I wrote Millie. But no, before that, I worked in an office in a business environment, and I guess this is my creative outlet. But on the other hand, I've always been someone who loves drawing and, experimenting with colors. I did fashion for a little bit. So, I think I've landed in something where I just really, really enjoy doing.
Wonderful. Yeah. It's neat. And, one of the things we stress and share here on the podcast, I know that, especially here in the States, there are so many people who are resistant to learning a different language. And there have been so many schools that have tried to introduce, create a two-way bilingual school, and parents sometimes are up in arms about it. I'm just thinking, we raise our kids. They're not fluent in Spanish. they understand Spanish. They don't have a lot of confidence in speaking it. They can get by. But just being able to speak English and Spanish, you've given yourself the ability to speak to about 40% of the world, I think. Yeah, that's a huge chunk of the world that you're able to communicate with. Add in Mandarin Chinese, and you're probably up to 80% of the world.
That's right, yeah. And it's one of the languages that is going to continue to grow. And especially also in the States, right? So, yeah, I've heard about those, so those schools who are a bit resistant to learning a new language. But, it doesn't hurt you. It's, you just learn about a different culture, just learn different words. Sometimes when my kids were little, my husband and I would speak in Spanish, very fast so they wouldn't understand or would spell in Spanish. We can't do that anymore. So we need to learn French or something.
Now, I was wondering, did your kids, when growing up, and when my kids were really young, we did the same thing. My wife spoke in Spanish and I spoke in English. And my son's first language was actually Spanglish, because about half of his words were English and half of his words were Spanish. And so the sentences would just go, I need my techo, the techo is leaking here. And is that something that you experience with your kids too?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for example, sometimes my kids go on YouTube and there's a video that looks a bit ugly. So I would say in Spanish, in Mexican Spanish, we say it's chafa. It's something that is bad quality or something like that. So sometimes my daughter would be, I don't like that song. It's chafa. So, or, they mix a bit of words here and there. Or my little one, she'll always say, can you give me milk, por favor? Things like that. So yeah, I think it's really cute. And sometimes in childcare, it's like, so this is what she was trying to say. She was saying leche or this other word. And it's like, that means milk. Okay, now I know.
And I think you'd agree with me. Learning two languages, and especially in the case of your kids and my kids, it didn't delay their acquisition of language at all. It doesn't hurt. If they're mixing up the language, it's okay. They're going to figure it out, and they're not going to get to first grade and not be able to speak the language.
That's right. I mean, even me as an adult, I mix up languages. Sometimes if I'm in a computer and someone comes and asks something, I'll say, "Sí, sorry, yes." But it's just funny. And no, it doesn't delay them at all. Yes, maybe they will have to think a little bit harder on what they're going to say, but I was reading an article talking about how kids can you kind of have two processing brains, and obviously that takes sometimes a little bit longer to think about something, but you still can communicate. And as you said, we can talk to half of the world population if you speak English and Spanish. Yeah. And it's also about the culture. If you go to a Spanish speaking film festival, sometimes, yes, it's translated and you can see the subtitles, but it's not the same as understanding exactly what they said. As I said, it's about culture and it's also about identity. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's neat. You're speaking about mixing up the languages sometimes. I was in Quebec in Canada and walked up to the front desk, and the gentleman started speaking to me in French, and I started speaking to him in Spanish. And he answered me in Spanish, and I'm like, oh man, he can speak 3 languages. This has been wonderful. Erika, tell everybody where they can go to find out more about you and more about your bilingual picture book series.
Yeah, so my website is www.milliebooks.com. You can also find me on Instagram, milliebooks_, and on Facebook as milliebooks.
Awesome.
So, yeah. And if you have any questions about, being bilingual or about how to read a bilingual book or something like that, you can just message me and I'll answer back.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking to the author and illustrator of the Millie Bilingual Picture Book Series, Erika Deery. Erika, thanks so much for being on the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great.
Please be sure to join us for the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Katie Pye. She's returning to the show to celebrate a brand new addition to her Fairy Tale Fraud series. She's a really fun guest. You don't want to miss it. That's the next episode of the show. Hey, if you're the author of a fantastic children's book, you may be frustrated at how difficult it is to let people know about your book. There's only one of you, and you're an author. You're not a marketing expert, and boy, it's really difficult to get book signings, and school visits aren't happening, and library visits aren't happening. We have something that could help. It's called the Reading with Your Kids Certified Great Read Program. If our panel of teachers, parents, and kids believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. And with that status comes a whole lot of really fantastic tools that can help your book stand out from the crowd of books that are published every single month. And when I say crowd of books, I probably should say horde of books, because there are literally thousands of books published every single month. It's really difficult to get noticed. We can help. Find out more about the program by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Click on the author's Click Here button at the top of the page. Scroll on down to Certified Great Read. I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Erika Deery. Please be sure to check out Millie and the Lost Colors. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Justina Thompson, Helen Frazier. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.